For 30 years, Ahmed led his mosque with unwavering devotion to Islam. But one fateful day, a heart attack brought him face to face with a reality he never expected. As Ahmed's lifeless body lay on the hospital bed, his consciousness journeyed to a realm beyond our world. What he encountered there would challenge his faith, his identity, and everything he had ever taught his followers. As the sun rose over the city, Ahmed's day began with the melodious call to prayer. For 3 decades, his voice had been a beacon of faith, guiding his community through the rhythms of Islamic devotion. In the soft light of dawn, Ahmed made his way to the mosque, his steps firm and purposeful. The weight of his responsibility as an imam rested comfortably on his shoulders, a mantle he had worn with pride and reverence for so long. Inside the mosque, Ahmed prepared for the morning prayers. His fingers traced the familiar patterns of intricate calligraphy adorning the walls, each verse a testament to his deep-rooted faith. As worshippers filtered in, Ahmed greeted them with warm smiles and gentle nods, his presence a source of comfort and stability in their lives. The congregation looked to him not just as a spiritual leader, but as a pillar of wisdom and guidance in an ever-changing world. As Ahmed led the prayers, his voice resonated with conviction, each word imbued with the weight of centuries of Islamic tradition. His extensive knowledge of the Quran and Hadith shone through in his recitations, captivating the hearts and minds of those who listened. Yet even as he spoke words of unwavering faith, a tiny seed of doubt occasionally flickered in the recesses of his mind. Questions about the nature of God, the intricacies of divine will, and the complexities of human existence sometimes surfaced, unbidden and unwelcome. But Ahmed was quick to push these thoughts aside, focusing instead on the certainty of his beliefs and the joy he found in sharing them with others. After prayers, he would often sit with members of his congregation, offering counsel and spiritual guidance. His passion for Islamic teachings was evident in the way he patiently explained complex concepts, making them accessible to all who sought understanding. As the day progressed, Ahmed faced the challenges that came with being a religious leader in the modern world. He navigated delicate conversations about faith and culture, helped mediate family disputes, and worked to bridge generational gaps within his community. The rapid pace of societal change sometimes left him feeling like a guardian of tradition in a sea of uncertainty. Yet, Ahmed strived to find balance, seeking ways to preserve the core tenets of Islam while addressing the evolving needs of his congregation. Little did Ahmed know that his unwavering commitment to Islam would soon be tested in ways he could never have imagined. As he went about his daily routines, a life-altering event loomed on the horizon, one that would shake the very foundations of his faith and identity. The questions he had so diligently suppressed were about to demand answers in the most unexpected and profound manner. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the mosque courtyard, Ahmed prepared for the evening prayers. His heart was filled with gratitude for another day spent in service to Allah and his community. Despite the occasional flickers of doubt, his commitment to Islam remained steadfast. Ahmed took a deep breath, centered himself, and stepped forward to lead the congregation once more, unaware that his world was about to change forever. The human heart beats an average of 100,000 times a day, each pulse a reminder of our mortality. For Ahmed, one of those beats was about to become his last. As he faced his congregation, little did he know that his next breath would be the beginning of an extraordinary journey beyond the veil of this world. As Ahmed stepped forward to lead the evening prayers, a sharp, searing pain suddenly gripped his chest. The familiar words of devotion caught in his throat, replaced by a strangled gasp. His hand clutched at his chest, eyes widening with a mixture of confusion and fear. The congregation, expecting to hear the comforting cadence of Ahmed's voice, instead witnessed their beloved Imam stumble and fall to his knees. Panic rippled through the mosque as the reality of the situation set in. Ahmed, always a pillar of strength and guidance, now lay writhing on the ornate prayer rug, his face contorted in agony. Members of the congregation rushed to his side, their voices a cacophony of concern and urgent calls for help. In the chaos, someone had the presence of mind to dial emergency services, their trembling fingers struggling to press the right buttons. Ahmed's world narrowed to a pinpoint of excruciating pain. Each labored breath felt like a monumental effort, as if an invisible weight pressed down on his chest. The fear of dying, a concept he had contemplated countless times in his sermons, now became a terrifying reality. As he struggled to draw air into his lungs, fragments of his life flashed before his eyes, moments of joy, struggle, and devotion intertwined with the faces of those he loved. The atmosphere in the mosque was electric with tension as Ahmed's condition rapidly deteriorated. His skin took on an ashen hue, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of the mosque's interior. Sweat beaded on his forehead, each droplet a testament to the internal battle raging within his body. Those closest to him could see the light in his eyes beginning to dim, like a candle flickering in a strong wind. As the minutes ticked by, feeling like an eternity to those present, Ahmed's consciousness began to slip away. The pain that had consumed him moments ago started to fade, replaced by an eerie sense of calm. The voices around him grew distant, as if he were sinking beneath the surface of a vast ocean. With one final shuddering breath, Ahmed's eyes closed and his body went still. In that moment, as the first wail of sirens could be heard in the distance, Ahmed's heart stopped beating. The Imam, who had guided so many through life's trials, now lay clinically dead on the floor of his beloved mosque. For several agonizing minutes, Ahmed existed in a liminal space between this world and the next, his fate hanging in the balance. Little did those frantically trying to revive him know that Ahmed's journey was far from over. As his physical form lay motionless, surrounded by the anguished faces of his congregation, Ahmed's consciousness began to drift towards a realm beyond anything he had ever imagined. The threshold between life and death, once an abstract concept in his teachings, now became a tangible reality. Ahmed stood poised on the precipice of an experience that would challenge everything he thought he knew about faith, existence, and the nature of the divine itself. As Ahmed's physical body lay still, his consciousness began an extraordinary journey. What if everything he had ever taught about death was about to be proven wrong? The next few moments would shatter his understanding of reality and challenge the very foundations of his faith. In an instant, Ahmed found himself floating above his own body, looking down at the scene unfolding in the mosque. The sensation was utterly foreign, a mixture of weightlessness and profound disorientation. He watched in stunned silence as members of his congregation huddled around his lifeless form, their faces etched with panic and sorrow. Ahmed tried to call out to them, to reassure them that he was still present, but no sound escaped his lips. The realization struck him. He was no longer bound by his physical form. As he struggled to comprehend this new state of existence, Ahmed's perception began to shift. The physical world around him took on an ethereal quality, colors becoming more vivid and intense. He could sense the emotions emanating from those gathered below, waves of fear, grief, and desperation washing over him. Yet despite the turmoil, Ahmed felt a strange sense of calm enveloping him. From his elevated vantage point, Ahmed observed details he had never noticed before. The intricate patterns on the mosque's ceiling seemed to pulse with life, each swirl and curve telling a story of devotion and artistry. He could see the subtle auras surrounding each person, shimmering with varying hues and intensities. This newfound perception both fascinated and unsettled him, challenging everything he thought he knew about the nature of reality. As Ahmed grappled with these revelations, he felt a gentle tugging sensation, as if an invisible thread were pulling him away from the earthly realm. The mosque began to fade from view, replaced by a swirling vortex of light and energy. Fear gripped him momentarily. Was this the transition to the afterlife he had so often spoken about in his sermons? The irony was not lost on Ahmed. After years of guiding others through their spiritual journeys, he now found himself utterly unprepared for his own. The pull grew stronger, and Ahmed felt himself being drawn inexorably towards a brilliant, pulsating light in the distance. As he moved further from his physical body, he experienced a profound sense of liberation. The concerns and limitations of his earthly existence began to fall away, replaced by an expanding awareness of something vast and incomprehensible. In this liminal space between worlds, Ahmed's consciousness expanded beyond anything he had ever imagined. Memories from his life flashed before him, not in a linear sequence, but as a tapestry of interconnected moments. He saw the impact of his actions rippling out through time, touching the lives of countless individuals in ways he had never realized. As the last vestiges of his connection to the physical world faded away, Ahmed surrendered to the journey that lay ahead. He fully detached from his earthly form, entering a dimension beyond the confines of space and time. The familiar constructs of his Islamic faith, the concepts of heaven and hell, judgment and reward, seemed inadequate to describe the reality he now experienced. Ahmed's consciousness soared through this new realm, awash in sensations and awareness beyond human comprehension. As he ventured deeper into this mysterious dimension, he sensed that he was on the cusp of a revelation that would forever alter his understanding of existence, faith, and the true nature of the divine. Suddenly, Ahmed found himself immersed in an ocean of brilliant light. This wasn't the paradise he had preached about for years. It was something far more profound, more real than anything he had ever imagined. As waves of unconditional love washed over him, Ahmed faced an impossible question. Could his entire life's teachings have been misguided? The intensity of the light was unlike anything Ahmed had ever experienced. It didn't hurt his eyes or overwhelm his senses. Instead, it seemed to penetrate his very being, filling him with an indescribable warmth and peace. The feeling of love that emanated from this light was so pure, so all-encompassing, that it made Ahmed's heart ache with a mixture of joy and longing. As he basked in this radiant embrace, Ahmed struggled to reconcile what he was experiencing with his Islamic beliefs. Where was the day of judgment he had spoken of countless times? Where were the angels recording his deeds? The familiar framework of his faith seemed inadequate to explain the profound reality he now found himself in. In this realm of light and love, Ahmed began to perceive shapes and forms that defied earthly description. Beings of light moved around him, their presence both comforting and awe-inspiring. These entities seemed to communicate without words, conveying messages of welcome and reassurance directly to Ahmed's consciousness. As Ahmed's awareness expanded, he noticed familiar symbols from various spiritual traditions floating in the ethereal space around him. A cross, a crescent moon, a lotus flower, and other sacred imagery intertwined in a harmonious dance. This unexpected unity of diverse spiritual symbols further challenged Ahmed's understanding of the divine. The sensations Ahmed experienced aligned with countless accounts of near-death experiences from around the world. The overwhelming feeling of love, the encounter with beings of light, and the sense of timelessness are common threads that run through many NDE narratives, regardless of the experience's cultural or religious background. As Ahmed marveled at the beauty and complexity of this realm, he sensed a shift in the energy around him. A powerful presence began to draw near, its approach causing the very fabric of this celestial space to ripple with anticipation. Ahmed felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He knew, with a certainty that transcended rational thought, that he was about to encounter something truly divine. The light seemed to coalesce, forming a radiant figure that approached Ahmed. As the being drew closer, Ahmed felt an overwhelming sense of recognition. This wasn't just any divine entity. It was a presence he knew intimately, yet in a way he had never expected. Ahmed's heart raced as he realized he stood in the presence of a being so profound, so unexpected, that it would challenge everything he thought he knew about God and existence. As the figure began to take shape, Ahmed braced himself for a revelation that would shatter the foundations of his faith and set him on an entirely new spiritual path. The next moments would unveil a truth both beautiful and terrifying, forever altering Ahmed's understanding of the divine and his place in the cosmos. As the radiant figure solidified before him, Ahmed's entire world tilted on its axis. The face he saw was achingly familiar, yet impossibly present. How could the central figure of another faith be standing before him in this divine realm? Ahmed's mind reeled as he confronted a truth that defied everything he had ever preached. The being before him was undeniably Jesus Christ, not as Ahmed had imagined him from Islamic teachings, but as a living, breathing presence of unparalleled love and power. Ahmed's shock was palpable, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Where was Allah? Where was the Prophet Muhammad? The foundations of his faith trembled beneath the weight of this unexpected encounter. Jesus appeared not as the historical figure Ahmed had learned about, but as a radiant being of pure light. His eyes held depths of compassion that seemed to pierce Ahmed's very soul. The love emanating from this divine presence was overwhelming, challenging everything Ahmed thought he knew about the nature of God. As Ahmed grappled with this shattering revelation, his mind raced through years of Islamic teachings about Jesus. He recalled the reverence Islam held for Jesus as a prophet, but not as the Son of God. Yet here he stood, emanating a divine authority that Ahmed could not deny. The cognitive dissonance was almost painful as Ahmed's beliefs clashed violently with the reality before him. Jesus' demeanor was one of infinite patience and understanding. He seemed to comprehend the internal struggle raging within Ahmed, offering a silent comfort that began to ease the Imam's turmoil. As Ahmed's initial shock subsided, he found himself drawn to this unexpected divine presence, feeling a connection that transcended his earthly understanding of faith and religion. The air around them seemed to pulse with anticipation. Ahmed sensed that Jesus was about to impart a message of profound importance. What words could possibly bridge the chasm between Ahmed's lifelong beliefs and this new reality? What truths would be revealed that could reconcile the teachings of Islam with the undeniable presence of Jesus as a divine being? As these questions swirled in Ahmed's mind, he felt a gradual shift within himself. The initial resistance began to melt away, replaced by an openness he had never before experienced. It was as if the barriers of dogma and rigid belief were dissolving in the face of this pure, unconditional love. Ahmed took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He realized that in this moment, he stood at a crossroads of faith and understanding. Whatever Jesus was about to say would irreversibly alter the course of Ahmed's spiritual journey. With a mixture of trepidation and eagerness, Ahmed prepared to listen, his heart and mind open to receive a truth that promised to transcend the boundaries of religion and touch the very essence of divine love. As Jesus began to speak, the realm around them seemed to hush in reverence. Ahmed leaned in, ready to receive a message that would bridge worlds, challenge beliefs, and open his eyes to a spiritual reality far greater than he had ever imagined. As Jesus began to speak, the words that flowed from his lips shattered Ahmed's understanding of faith and reality. What if everything he believed about religion was just the tip of an infinite spiritual iceberg? Jesus' voice resonated with a warmth that seemed to envelop Ahmed's very being. "My child," he began, "I see the confusion in your heart. You have lived a life of devotion, yet now you find yourself adrift in unfamiliar waters." The compassion in Jesus' eyes was overwhelming, causing Ahmed's fear to gradually subside. As Jesus continued, his message unfolded like a beautiful tapestry, weaving together threads of universal love and acceptance. He spoke of a divine love that knew no boundaries, no religious divisions, and no exclusivity. "The love that flows from the source of all," Jesus explained, "is not confined to any one faith or tradition. It is the lifeblood of the universe, pulsing through every living being." Ahmed listened, his mind reeling as he tried to reconcile these words with his lifetime of Islamic teachings. Jesus seemed to sense his inner turmoil and smiled gently. "The paths to divine truth are many, Ahmed. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and all other faiths are but different languages expressing the same eternal love." As Jesus spoke, Ahmed began to see vivid images of the world's religions intertwining like branches of a great tree, all drawing nourishment from the same divine roots. He saw the commonalities between faiths, the emphasis on compassion, forgiveness, and service to others, shining brighter than their differences. Jesus' words grew more intense, building towards a profound revelation. "The truth that binds all creation," he said, his voice filled with an indescribable power, "is that love is the fundamental fabric of existence. It is not just an emotion or a choice, but the very essence of the divine." Ahmed felt a shift within himself, as if veils were being lifted from his eyes. The rigid boundaries he had built around his faith began to dissolve, replaced by an expansive understanding that seemed to stretch to the edges of the universe. "But what of our differences?" Ahmed found himself asking, his voice barely above a whisper. "What of the conflicts that have divided us for centuries?" Jesus' response was both simple and profound. "Those divisions exist only in the minds of humans, not in the heart of the divine. True spirituality transcends these artificial boundaries, embracing the unity of all creation." As Jesus' words sank in, Ahmed experienced a deep, transformative understanding. It was as if his consciousness expanded to encompass a truth so vast and beautiful that it defied description. He saw that his life as an Imam had not been in vain, but rather a step on a greater journey towards understanding. As this revelation settled into Ahmed's being, he sensed a subtle shift in the realm around him. The light began to pulse with a new rhythm, and he felt a gentle tugging sensation. Jesus' form started to fade, but his voice remained clear. "It is time for you to return, Ahmed. Share this message of universal love with the world." Ahmed felt a mixture of reluctance and purpose as he prepared for his journey back to the physical world. He knew that the path ahead would be challenging, but he was filled with a new sense of mission. As the heavenly realm began to recede, Ahmed carried with him a truth that would forever change his life and the lives of those around him. What if everything you thought you knew about life and death was just the beginning? For Ahmed, the journey back to his physical body would challenge not only his understanding of existence, but also his very identity. As the radiant presence of Jesus began to fade, Ahmed felt an irresistible pull back towards the earthly realm. A mixture of reluctance and fear washed over him. How could he leave this place of pure love and enlightenment? The thought of returning to a life that no longer aligned with his newfound understanding filled him with trepidation. The transition back to the physical world was unlike anything Ahmed had ever experienced. It began with a sensation of gentle spinning, as if he were being drawn into a cosmic whirlpool. The brilliant light that had surrounded him started to dim, replaced by a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes that defied description. Ahmed's consciousness seemed to stretch and compress, as if passing through dimensions beyond human comprehension. As he descended, Ahmed became acutely aware of the limitations of his physical form. The weightlessness he had enjoyed in the spiritual realm gave way to a growing heaviness. He could feel the boundaries of his body taking shape, confining his expanded consciousness. It was like trying to pour an ocean into a thimble. The journey back was not just physical, but also emotional. Ahmed experienced a rapid succession of feelings: joy, sorrow, love, and fear, as if his soul was reacquainting itself with the full spectrum of human emotion. Memories of his life flashed before him, but now viewed through the lens of his profound spiritual encounter. As Ahmed drew closer to his body, he began to sense the physical world around him. The sterile smell of a hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment, muffled voices filled with concern and relief. These sensations grew stronger, anchoring him back to the earthly plane. In the final moments of his return, Ahmed felt a powerful surge of energy. It was as if his expanded consciousness was being compressed back into his physical form. The process was intense, almost overwhelming, but guided by an unseen force that seemed to know exactly how to reunite body and soul. With a sudden jolt, Ahmed's consciousness fully merged with his physical body. He could feel the weight of his eyelids, the dryness in his throat, the dull ache in his chest where his heart had momentarily stopped. The contrast between the spiritual realm he had just left and the harsh reality of his hospital bed was stark and disorienting. As Ahmed prepared to open his eyes, a mix of anticipation and apprehension filled him. He knew that the moment he faced the world, he would begin the challenging task of integrating his extraordinary experience into his everyday life. How would he explain what he had seen and learned? How could he continue his role as an Imam with this new understanding of spiritual truth? With a deep breath, Ahmed slowly opened his eyes, ready to face a world that would never look the same to him again. The fluorescent lights of the hospital room seemed dim compared to the radiance he had witnessed. As his vision focused, he saw the concerned faces of his family and medical staff gathered around his bed, unaware of the profound journey he had just completed. As Ahmed's eyelids fluttered open, the stark reality of the hospital room came into focus. The harsh fluorescent lights seemed dim compared to the radiant realm he had just left behind. Surrounding his bed were the concerned faces of his family and medical staff, their expressions a mixture of relief and worry. For a moment, Ahmed felt as if he was straddling two worlds: the physical realm he had known all his life and the transcendent spiritual plane he had just experienced. The shock of reorientation hit Ahmed like a wave. The beeping of monitors and the sterile smell of disinfectant were jarring after the profound peace he had encountered. He tried to speak, to share the extraordinary journey he had undergone, but his throat was dry and raw from the intubation tube that had been removed. His family leaned in, eager to hear his first words, but Ahmed found himself at a loss. How could he possibly convey the magnitude of what he had witnessed? As Ahmed's eyes darted from face to face, he saw his wife's tears of joy, his children's hopeful smiles, and the guarded optimism of the medical staff. The doctor stepped forward, explaining in measured tones that Ahmed had suffered a severe myocardial infarction, a heart attack that had temporarily stopped his heart. The medical team had managed to resuscitate him, but it had been a close call. Ahmed listened, marveling at how clinical and detached this explanation seemed compared to the profound spiritual awakening he had experienced. The cardiologist detailed Ahmed's condition, discussing the damage to his heart muscle and the road to recovery ahead. There would be medication, lifestyle changes, and a period of rehabilitation. As the doctor spoke, Ahmed felt a growing disconnect between his physical ailment and the spiritual transformation he had undergone. How could he focus on cholesterol levels and exercise regimens when he had just communed with the divine? As the initial shock began to wear off, Ahmed contemplated sharing his experience. He looked at his family, their faces etched with concern and love, and opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. How could he explain that he had encountered Jesus, that his understanding of faith and the divine had been irrevocably altered? Would they understand, or would they attribute his vision to the trauma of his near-death experience? The weight of his secret pressed upon Ahmed. He realized that sharing his experience prematurely could have profound consequences for his family, his congregation, and his role as an imam. The gravity of his revelation required careful consideration and reflection. With a mixture of reluctance and resolve, Ahmed decided to keep his experience private for the time being. As the day wore on, Ahmed's room filled with well-wishers, members of his congregation, fellow imams, and community leaders. They offered prayers and words of encouragement, unaware of the internal transformation their spiritual guide had undergone. Ahmed smiled and nodded, accepting their good wishes while silently grappling with the chasm between his old life and his new understanding. As night fell and the stream of visitors dwindled, Ahmed found himself alone with his thoughts. He knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, not just in terms of his physical recovery, but in reconciling his profound spiritual experience with his role as a religious leader. As he drifted off to sleep, Ahmed's mind swirled with questions about faith, truth, and the nature of divine love. His near-death experience had opened a door to a new reality, and he knew that crossing that threshold would change everything. Have you ever had your entire worldview shattered in an instant? For Ahmed, the days following his near-death experience were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and beliefs. As he lay in his hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile white walls and the steady beep of medical equipment, Ahmed found himself grappling with a profound spiritual crisis. The familiar rituals of his Islamic faith now felt hollow and incomplete. When the time for prayer came, Ahmed found himself hesitating. His hands, once so sure in their movements, now trembled as he attempted to perform the wudu, the ritual cleansing before prayer. As he faced towards Mecca, the words of the Salah caught in his throat. How could he recite these prayers with conviction when he had experienced a reality that seemed to transcend the boundaries of his religion? Ahmed's mind raced with questions that seemed to have no answers. How could he reconcile his encounter with Jesus with his lifelong devotion to Islam? The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of the radiant light and felt the all-encompassing love he had experienced in the afterlife. These memories stood in stark contrast to the rigid doctrines he had preached for so many years. The fear of losing his identity as an imam weighed heavily on Ahmed's heart. His role as a spiritual leader had defined him for decades. Now he felt like an imposter. How could he guide his congregation when his own faith was in such turmoil? The thought of standing before his community, knowing the profound truth he had experienced, filled him with a mixture of dread and anticipation. As days passed, Ahmed found himself drawn to the Bible that sat on his bedside table, left by a well-meaning visitor. With trembling hands, he opened it, his eyes scanning the familiar stories of Jesus that he had known only as a prophet. Now, these words took on new meaning, resonating with his otherworldly encounter. Yet he couldn't bring himself to fully abandon the teachings of Islam that had shaped his entire life. The implications of embracing his new beliefs were staggering. Ahmed knew that if he were to openly acknowledge his experience, he risked losing everything: his position, his community, perhaps even his family. Yet the pull of this new understanding was undeniable. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a spiritual landscape far more vast and interconnected than he had ever imagined. As his discharge date approached, Ahmed made a decision that would alter the course of his life. He would not abandon his Islamic faith, but instead he would embark on a journey to explore Christianity alongside it. Perhaps, he thought, there was a way to bridge these two worlds, to find a truth that transcended religious boundaries. With a mix of trepidation and newfound purpose, Ahmed prepared to return to his community. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he also felt a sense of excitement. For the first time in his life, he was stepping into the unknown, guided by an experience that had shown him the limitless nature of divine love. As Ahmed stepped back into his familiar mosque, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over him. How would he navigate the treacherous waters between his newfound beliefs and the expectations of his devoted congregation? The Imam who left was not the same man who now stood before them, carrying a secret that could shatter the very foundations of their faith community. The warm welcome Ahmed received was overwhelming. Faces beamed with joy, hands reached out to touch him, and voices raised in thankful prayer for his recovery. For a moment, Ahmed felt a pang of guilt. These people had no idea of the profound transformation he had undergone. As he made his way to the front of the mosque, each step felt heavier than the last. When the time came to lead the prayers, Ahmed's inner turmoil reached a fever pitch. The words that had once flowed so easily from his lips now felt foreign, almost hollow. He stumbled through the familiar verses, his mind racing with memories of his otherworldly encounter. The congregation, oblivious to his struggle, followed his lead with unwavering devotion. In the days that followed, Ahmed found himself subtly altering his teachings. Where once he had spoken of the strict divisions between faiths, he now emphasized the universal themes of love, compassion, and unity. He wove stories from various spiritual traditions into his sermons, drawing parallels that hinted at a greater, more inclusive truth. These changes did not go unnoticed. Some members of the congregation found themselves drawn to Ahmed's new approach, feeling a sense of expansion in their own spiritual understanding. Others, however, began to whisper among themselves, questioning the shift in their Imam's teachings. As Ahmed grappled with his crisis of faith, he was not alone. Many religious leaders throughout history have faced similar struggles. The weight of responsibility, combined with personal doubts and revelations, can create a profound inner conflict. Ahmed found himself walking a tightrope between his duty to his congregation and his newfound understanding of spiritual truth. The prospect of revealing his near-death experience to his community loomed large in Ahmed's mind. He imagined the shock, the disbelief, and possibly the anger that would follow such a revelation. Yet, a part of him yearned to share the profound love and unity he had experienced, to open their eyes to a reality that transcended religious boundaries. After much soul-searching, Ahmed decided on a gradual approach. He would slowly introduce new ideas, gently challenging long-held beliefs and encouraging his followers to explore the depths of their own spirituality. It was a risky path, but one he felt compelled to walk. As weeks turned into months, a subtle shift began to occur within the mosque. Some members of the congregation found themselves deeply moved by Ahmed's new teachings, experiencing a spiritual awakening of their own. Others grew increasingly concerned, sensing that their Imam was leading them into uncharted theological territory. The air in the mosque crackled with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Ahmed could feel the growing curiosity and concern among his followers. He knew that soon he would have to confront the questions that were surely forming in their minds. The time was approaching when he would need to make a decision that could change everything, for himself, for his congregation, and for the very nature of faith itself. As the sun rose on the day of his fateful sermon, Ahmed's heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The mosque, a sanctuary he had called home for decades, now felt like an arena where he would face his greatest challenge. Ahmed had spent weeks crafting his words, searching for the perfect balance between honesty and sensitivity. How could he convey the profound truth he had experienced without shattering the faith of those who looked to him for guidance? The congregation filed in, their faces a canvas of curiosity and concern. Whispers fluttered through the air like autumn leaves, carrying fragments of speculation about their Imam's recent change in demeanor. Ahmed took a deep breath, his fingers tracing the worn edges of his prayer beads as he stepped up to the pulpit. The familiar ritual brought little comfort as he gazed out at the sea of expectant faces. "My dear brothers and sisters," Ahmed began, his voice wavering slightly, "I stand before you today with a truth that may challenge everything we have believed." A hush fell over the mosque as Ahmed recounted his near-death experience, describing the realm of light and love he had encountered. He spoke of his meeting with Jesus, emphasizing the message of universal love that transcended religious boundaries. As Ahmed's words hung in the air, the reactions rippled through the congregation like waves on a stormy sea. Some faces lit up with wonder and recognition, as if Ahmed's experience had given voice to their own unspoken spiritual yearnings. Others darkened with disbelief and anger, their brows furrowing as they grappled with the implications of their Imam's revelation. One elderly man stood up, his voice quavering with emotion. "How can you say these things? Have you abandoned our faith?" The pain in his eyes mirrored the ache in Ahmed's heart. Others joined in, their voices rising in a cacophony of confusion and accusation. Ahmed stood firm, his resolve strengthened by the truth he had witnessed. As the initial shock subsided, a small group of congregants approached Ahmed, their eyes shining with curiosity and openness. "Tell us more," they urged. "We want to understand." This core group became a lifeline for Ahmed, a reminder that truth, no matter how challenging, would always find receptive hearts. In the days that followed, Ahmed faced the harsh reality of rejection. Some long-time followers turned their backs, unable to reconcile his new teachings with their deeply held beliefs. The emotional toll was heavy, each dismissal feeling like a physical blow. Yet, Ahmed found strength in the growing circle of those who remained, their minds and hearts open to a more expansive understanding of spirituality. As the dust settled, Ahmed realized that his journey had only just begun. The path ahead was uncertain, but he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He would become a bridge between faiths, using his unique experience to foster understanding and unity. With each step forward, Ahmed carried the profound revelation of divine love, ready to share it with all who were willing to listen. With a newfound sense of purpose, Ahmed set out on a path few would dare to tread. Could one man's vision truly bridge the chasm between two of the world's largest religions? The answer would challenge not only Ahmed's faith, but the very foundations of interfaith dialogue. Ahmed's journey as an interfaith leader began with small, tentative steps. He reached out to local Christian leaders, inviting them to informal meetings where they could share their beliefs and experiences. These initial conversations were fraught with tension, as centuries of misunderstanding and conflict hung heavy in the air. Yet, Ahmed persevered, drawing on the profound love he had experienced during his near-death encounter to guide his words and actions. As news of Ahmed's interfaith efforts spread, he faced fierce opposition from hardliners on both sides. Conservative imams accused him of betraying Islam, while some Christian leaders viewed his outreach with suspicion. Anonymous threats arrived at his doorstep, warning him to cease his heretical activities. Yet for every voice raised in anger, Ahmed found others who were curious, even supportive of his mission. In his teachings, Ahmed began to weave a tapestry of shared beliefs and values. He spoke of the common threads that ran through both faiths, the emphasis on compassion, forgiveness, and service to others. He shared stories of prophets revered in both traditions, highlighting the spiritual lineage that connected Islam and Christianity. With each sermon, each interfaith gathering, Ahmed chipped away at the walls of prejudice and fear that had long divided these communities. Ahmed's work drew inspiration from successful interfaith initiatives around the world. He studied the methods of organizations that had fostered dialogue between conflicting groups, adapting their approaches to his local context. He organized joint charitable projects, bringing Muslims and Christians together to serve their shared community. These acts of kindness and cooperation slowly began to transform hearts and minds. As Ahmed's influence grew, so did the potential impact of his work. He was invited to speak at conferences and universities, sharing his vision of a world where different faiths could coexist in harmony. Media outlets began to take notice, intrigued by the Imam who had experienced a Christian afterlife and returned to preach unity. Ahmed's story touched people far beyond his local community, sparking conversations about the nature of faith and the possibility of finding common ground across religious divides. Despite the progress, challenges remained. Ahmed continued to face criticism and skepticism from those who clung to more rigid interpretations of their faiths. There were setbacks and moments of doubt when the task seemed insurmountable. Yet in those times, Ahmed would close his eyes and recall the overwhelming love he had experienced in the afterlife. That memory became his anchor, reminding him of the greater truth that lay beyond human-made divisions. As Ahmed's interfaith movement gained momentum, he found a deep sense of fulfillment in his new calling. The joy of seeing former enemies embrace as friends, of witnessing the transformation of hearts hardened by prejudice. These moments made every struggle worthwhile. Ahmed had discovered his true purpose, one that transcended the boundaries of any single faith tradition. With each passing day, Ahmed's journey continued to unfold, its implications rippling out into the world. His story had become a testament to the power of love and understanding to overcome even the deepest divides. As he looked to the future, Ahmed wondered just how far this message of unity could spread and what profound changes it might bring to a world so desperately in need of healing. Ahmed's near-death experience unleashed a profound transformation, not just in his own life, but in the lives of countless others. His journey from a traditional imam to an interfaith bridge builder demonstrates the power of spiritual encounters to reshape our understanding of the divine. Ahmed's story challenges us to look beyond the confines of our individual beliefs and consider the possibility of universal truths that transcend religious boundaries. As Ahmed's message of unity and love spread, it sparked a ripple effect of understanding and compassion. Communities once divided by faith began to find common ground, realizing that their shared humanity far outweighed their differences. This gradual shift in perspective offers a glimpse of what might be possible if we approach faith with open hearts and minds. Yet, Ahmed's journey also raises thought-provoking questions. How do we reconcile deeply held religious convictions with experiences that seem to contradict them? Is there a universal truth that underlies all spiritual paths, or are we simply interpreting the ineffable through the lens of our own cultural backgrounds? As we ponder these questions, Ahmed's story reminds us that the pursuit of spiritual truth is an ongoing journey, one that requires courage, humility, and an unwavering commitment to love.